Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. We've all heard the saying that about 90% of the baits that we see hanging up in the local tackle shop, those baits are there and they're designed for one purpose, and that is to catch fishermen, not to catch bass. Today, in our episode, we're going to talk about 5 of those baits that, quite honestly, the baits caught me, but I have yet to catch a fish on any of these baits. These baits suck as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to pass that along to you. We'll see if you agree with those baits. Stick around, guys. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. So yeah, we're going to talk about baits, quite honestly, that I haven't caught a fish on. And I bought them. In a lot of cases, I bought multiples of them, different sizes, different colors, things like that, thinking, wow, this is going to be a good, it looks good, but I've yet to catch them. And quite honestly, some of these are baits that I've actually put on the channel, like, oh, I think it's going to be good. I haven't tried it yet, but let me show you this bait. And after a certain period of time, I still have not caught a fish on them. But I also have something as we get into these baits that I'm going to share with you and see whether you agree with that as well. So let's get started. The first bait that I'm going to talk about that I have never caught a fish on is the Whopper Plopper style bait. Okay, this is a Whopper Plopper. This is a Chapo. It doesn't matter which brand. I've yet to catch a fish on either one. I can't say that I've fished it a ton, but I have fished it. And to be honest, if I'm looking for that kind of action, I've got a lot more confidence in a buzzbait than I have a Whopper Plopper. And the reality is, I think a buzzbait is more versatile. I think that you can fish it in a lot more settings than you can a treble hooked type of bait. And I've yet to, like I said, I've tried the Whopper Plopper and the Chapo. I've not caught a fish on it. So that's my number one bait that, quite honestly, I'm not going to invest a whole lot of money in buying more. I'd love to hear your feedback on that and see whether you agree with me on that one. Now, the next 2 baits that I have are pretty similar in that one is this bait right here. This is called the Bellow's Gill. And I've got the package right here. This is a G-Crack bait. And I really kind of was pretty excited about this. I did an Underwater Wednesday episode about that bait and really was pretty excited about it. And I gave it a shot. And I think I caught 1 bass with it. 1 bass on Lake Geneva with it. Now, I know guys that swear by this bait. And it'll be the only bait that they throw, for example, on Lake Geneva and things like that. So this is where I'm kind of getting to. I think that in a lot of situations, there are baits that, for example, I might say I can't catch a fish on it. But either I'm not using it correctly, I'm not using the right color, I'm not using the right size. And I'm saying you might have a certain bait that you've thrown and never caught, but you might be not doing it exactly right, or maybe it's the wrong color, maybe it's just in that particular lake that it doesn't work. The Bellow's Gill doesn't work. Now here's another one that I did a video on. Watch this. Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this Underwater Wednesday episode. We're in the pool today, and we've got the Berkeley Powerbait Gillie. The Berkeley Gillie, I have yet to catch a fish on that bait in any way, shape, or form. Talk about a bait that is so sexy in the package. I mean, you want to buy that because it looks so real. And yet, I've yet to catch fish on it. And quite honestly, I know that there's a lot of guys who feel the same way about that bait. I've heard it said that not a lot of guys get bit on that. But again, I'd love to hear it. You need to make some notes and send me comments on this episode, I want to hear whether you guys have caught fish on the Gillie and whether or not you think it's a bait that attracts fishermen or whether it really catches fish. Now, the last bait that I have, and this is going to be kind of the proof of what I've been saying, is the Berkeley Chigger Craw, okay? Chigger Craw has been out for a lot of years, and I've thrown a Chigger Craw in a lot of situations, and right now, I can't say I've never caught fish on it. In fact, just a week ago, I did an episode on Lake Geneva with my buddy Ken Winston where we were catching the crap out of big largemouth using a Chigger Craw trailer on a jig. And so I can't say I've never caught fish on a Chigger Craw anymore. But the reality is, if I was doing this video 2 weeks ago, that's exactly what I'd be saying. Because up until last week when we did that episode, I have very, very rarely caught a fish on a Chigger Craw. I still contend with the fact that that Chigger Craw is not a whole lot different than, say, a paca craw or any kind of flapping kind of bait. But the reality is until recently, a Chigger Craw just didn't do it for me in terms of a trailer. But now, what I look at is the one place that I will throw a Chigger Craw is Lake Geneva in Green Pumpkin if I'm throwing it behind a jig where I'm working a jig on weed lines or breaks. I'm not really going to use a Chigger Craw in a whole lot of other places. And that's kind of the point that I'm making here, guys, is that I've got a list of these baits that I don't think work and that I've never caught a fish. But the question is it that the bait really doesn't work, or is it that I have not found the right cadence, the right color, the right size, the right application to use the bait? I guarantee that as you guys are watching this, somebody out there is saying, oh, well, I catch them pretty good on a Whopper Plopper. Oh, heck, I love a Chigger Craw in this situation. Wow, that Bellow's Gill works for me when I do this. I get that, okay? I'd love to know, where are those applications and how does that work? Because quite honestly, I think that there are baits that are universal. Have you ever caught a fish on a Cinco? Boom. Cinco works, a lot of applications, a lot of lakes, a lot of different colors. Okay. But then you get to certain baits that have very small windows of when they work good and who can use them. There were baits that I thought about including in this episode, things like glide baits or big swim baits. Have I caught fish on them? Yeah. Do I use them a lot and do I catch them very often? No, not very much. But that's because they kind of fit into that window of, if you know where to throw them and when to throw them, and what's your application, you can get fish to bite, but you aren't going to catch a ton of fish over and over and over on them. I'd love to hear your comments on this topic, guys. Are there baits that you've bought that you just can't catch a fish on? Let me know that, and let me know whether you agree with these 5 that I listed here. These are not baits that I'm going to consider my go-to baits. That's for darn sure. Except for that Chigger Craw. I'm going to put that on Lake Geneva. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, hit that subscribe button. Hit that hype button. We're trying to get our old guys to hype up the videos. If you haven't, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you again tomorrow on another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.